Hey everyone, it's excessively bright because it's end of the day, but I wanted to show off the material lab. This is something one of our colleagues, Rena, made and absolutely find it fantastic. Example of how to generate a bunch of materials and various things that one might be curious to do as it literally puts them all in. Um, yeah, so we have transforms, gradients over here, time, sign distance fields or SDFs. There's more that are loading in. Literally just opened up the project. I'm running it in 5.2. Should be quite easy. You can get the glows and offsets, etc. Masks, patterns, distortions. A lot of fun things to learn here. Grid tiling, all sorts of fun ways to tile. And distortion. So this is where you're distorting the UVs to do different things. And some utility stuff that I end up using the most. Random is my jam, random's my thing. I like random. And I'll show you what I like to do with random. So with this lab in mind, I'm just gonna make a material right off the bat. MUI test mat for the material lab. And in here, I'm gonna put my domain in the user interface. Translucent if I want. So I'm just gonna roll with it, and I'm going to open up my content drawer. And I have in mind, I want to start with a shape. So I want to go into the material functions. I want to look at some SDF shapes. Let's do a box. We could do triangles, but boxes are fun. And I just want to put the fill in the final color. And voila, we've got a box, and I can draw my show border, and we can see it's at half the scale. I could change the width and the height. But let's say I want to turn this into, and let's zoom in here quite a bit so we can have more of the screen. Let's say I want to turn this into a pattern. So I'm going to go into patterns here. I want regular pattern UVs in here, and now we have a pattern. And I want 10, or I'm going to want a lot of these patterns. We could do 10 by 10, 10 by whatever. And so that's a grid of 10 by 10, but if I wanted my Y to be only 1, then this is the grid, but it's not scaled, right? So the box has now been stretched to be a rectangle because we're stretching the UVs. If we preview the node, it's being stretched here. So we can use the pattern UVs, and that'll be, now they're perfectly square no matter what the size is. So that's not gonna matter as much, but one of the great things that I like to do is I like to use random. So in the utilities here, we go to random. And if I were to just plug the raw UVs into float here and put this in size, we'll get basically the styling for most of my YouTube is noise, random noise, which I think looks fantastic. But this isn't quite what we want. We need, we want to randomly size each one of these boxes by a random 2D XY. So instead, I need to floor my UVs, and I just happen to know this right now. But if I were to preview this, it's going to essentially pixelate all the UVs is the best way that I can describe it. And then that should then give me a random pattern that randomly sizes the content. So if that's not in here, I don't do size. Not gonna matter. Let's do random quarter radius. It's gonna have an issue because it's a 2D vector that we're putting in. a 4D vector, but this is random radiuses. What if I were to put random stroke thickness, and let's change this to outline to be the stroke instead of the square. Voila, random strokes for the folks. That's it. So we can go into size here. And what if I want to animate this? Well, my favorite way is to probably put time into the seed. So a seed is a random seed that you were pulling from. So 0.1 is going to give us a different result than what we just saw. So I like to animate the seed. You could animate some other stuff as well, like the UVs. But I like to animate. Well, let's go to the utilities. Let's go to time. Let's go to time displacement. Fun one. Let's put the value in and go here. This is probably going to look quite crazy. Yeah, that looks a bit normal. Usually you want to put time into your value, so I'll put time. I don't know if it already has time in it. I guess we'll find out. Let's just plug that in. Yeah, see? Already got it. Look at that. I don't even need time. Time's going in there, so random displacement here, but I want stepped time, which means I want this to run at certain frames per second. So I can go into my, and this is just, I happen to know this with, I happen to know that 0 to 1 time is exactly the same as a gradient that is 0 to 1 linearly, which is exactly the same to get stepped time, is I just need a stepped gradient. So here's a stepped gradient. It's not going to show me that much, but here it steps at 0, goes to gray, a lighter gray, and then the white. So that's 4 steps. The number of steps that we're using here is 4. And if I put 10, then my steps will be 10. So that's a stepped gradient. And you can do the same with time. So imagine if this were just a regular old gradient. You can actually run that time through 0 to 1. It's just like a gradient through 0 to 1. If I want to keep the initial range, and I stop previewing that node. And we line these up a little bit nicer. Now it's stepping every 4 frames per second to animate, so I can put 2 here. And this will animate at every 2 frames per second. So it's changing the random size at 2 frames per second. Again, we can swap this out for, let's do stroke thickness and do the outline again. Same concept's gonna happen. Cool. So yeah, there's a setup for you if you want to have something that's stepped. Again, if you don't want step time and it's nice and doing a fun little dot preview, all of that's great. Or you could do ping pong time, where it's gonna ping pong one way to the other. But I think we're gonna need time. I haven't actually tried ping pong time. Yeah. It's going very fast. Which is great. Good stuff. So that's going back and forth, etc. Yeah, and there's an easy thing. So maybe I want a progress bar. Tiling, I want 10 across, 10 squares across, something like that. And I only want 1 on the y-axis because this is a progress bar. And I want the scaled pattern UVs that's happening over here. So now you can see we're getting into the area where this is a progress bar. Great. So let's begin to mask out how many UVs we want our progress bar. We're still using random, which I enjoy. just to have the fun drawing. So we have our stepped UVs. So we have the value of 10. And we just need to mask out the UVs by how many there are. So I haven't done this math in a while. We'll see what I'm gonna say. Floor, so we don't have any half points. Oh, I need to multiply it. Or I need to scale UVs floored, actually. So this is gonna make us 10. No, it's not gonna make us 10. Raw UVs floored, not the scaled UVs. So this is 0, and then this, this column is 1, this column is 2, 3, 4, 5, so it's counting 0 all the way up to 10. So if I subtract by, I can inverse this. I could actually just keep that, but I can multiply it by my outline just to give you the look of what we're going for. And oh, it would be helpful if I actually put it in final color. So this is gonna mask it. It's gonna put it in the opacity, not necessarily in the So we've masked out where the 0 is, and so instead we're masking out the very edge. So it's easy for us is we can also round it instead of floor it. So it takes the next whole number. So you can see now we have half of the square going on here. So if we were to preview the round, that's what the round is giving us versus the floor. But usually you want to take your total amount and you want to subtract by some amount that we want. So if there's 10 healthy units, let's subtract by 7. And you can see here, these, because this is a red and yellow, but the yellow value is if we had 10 markers across here, this would be 10 across, which is great. So we just need to mask out the channel that we want, which is probably the red channel. Yeah, so the red channel is the one that's like, this is the yellow marking to these. So then we plug that into the multiply, which is the opacity again. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of our 10 boxes that we had. So this could then be a, this could be 9 health units. This could be 2. And this is how you'd make a progress bar. So if we had more than 10 here, let's put this at a respectable 7. And if we put this to 20, it's then gonna have 7, showing 7 out of 20 of these boxes. So that's essentially this, and this could be replaced by, we have the box here, but let's say we wanted our let's go to SDF. So let's say ours were triangles. You can essentially just swap in maybe we put this as the radius. We put the fill. Oh, no, we want to multiply by here. And put the final color there. And so now this is this is kind of fun to look at. This is 7 randomly animating radius triangles. But if we get rid of the radius here, where it's random, it's 7 triangles across. And again, we could put 10, which is then filled. So you could replace any shape here, because again, the math is to mask out however many UVs you've created, and it will then generate that. So this one's a quick one, kind of showing off what the material lab can do for you. Some of the fun things you can mess with it, a lot of that stuff. And yeah, that's how you can make a different shaped progress bar as much as you need it. And the last thing is you could probably do some UV math here. Pixelate random. Oh, that's utilities. Where am I? I guess it's the transform? Distortion, skew. So let's try this. Let's just try to. Oh, the skewing. So this is skewing the entire container, which is not what we want. We want to skew after. Looks like we want to skew after we tile it, which probably makes sense. Yeah, and then they're all little skewed fun things here. We could plug in the 1D rotation. We'll see a bunch of skewed wobbly some wobbly rotating squares. But let's go back. Let's delete that one. Let's try another slant. That's the one that I was actually trying to go for. So the slant amount. And yeah, now we've got a box that's horizontal. Remember, our box size can be random here, so then we can randomly size it on the width and the height. Look at that. So we have random box skews, but let's say we only want it on the width to scale, not the height. So we can append not the many. I just want a regular append. And the 1D, so we only want to append the width. We want to keep the height the same, and let's say the height is 0.5, because I believe that's what it is right now. We plug that into size. And yeah, now we have different off-skating widths in a skewed or a slanted box that also has a progress bar in it, so we could be at 6. We'll randomly skew or scale 6 of these. Yeah. So that's a quickie on the UI Material Lab. And let me know what you folks think.